Yeah, I want to make sure that the food I feed my family is safe.
I want to be sure that whatever I'm buying is safe for the environment.
Atrazine is an essential tool that helps farmers grow our food in harmony with our environment. So what are we doing to make sure it's safe?
In a word, everything. Syngenta takes its responsibility for safety testing extremely seriously. All of our products have to be registered by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA.
The average crop protection product is tested in over 180 tests.
In the case of Atrazine, we've got nearly 7,000 studies that support that registration.
The agency cannot approve that product unless the agency concludes that there's a reasonable certainty of no harm to man or the environment. So it's a very strict statutory standard, and if you don't meet that standard, the product doesn't get approved.
When you consider the safety record and the immense environmental benefits of atrazine, you can understand why it has become such an essential tool in the field of agriculture.
Atrazine is one of the most extensively studied herbicides in modern agriculture, and one of the most well understood.
We don't just test a product before it is actually licensed, but we continue to test the product throughout the product life cycle.
There's a continuing re-review as science evolves, studies get more comprehensive, new data required.
We ask the scientific questions of ourselves and make sure that we're answering those questions as best we possibly can. That's why we've gone way beyond what EPA has required us to do when it comes to studies.
The EPA has registered and thoroughly studied the use of atrazine and set a regulatory limit of 3 parts per billion in drinking water. But that limit has a 1,000-fold safety factor built into it.
When the agency sets a regulatory standard like the parts per billion that's allowed in water, there's a huge safety factor between the possible exposure they're saying is acceptable and where there would be any possible risk.
That's a level that would allow you to drink thousands of gallons a day and still be safe. So it's insignificant. Let's put everything in perspective.
In fact, at those levels, if you drank 11,000 gallons of water every day for 70 years, you still would not reach the no effect level.
It's not just EPA saying it's okay. You've got the Australians, the Canadians, the UK, the World Health Organization, looking at the same data, coming to the same basic conclusions.
There's been a lot of controversy and concern over the impacts on frogs of various agricultural inputs, and especially herbicides, in the last 15 or 20 years. And it's become one of the most scientifically studied, thankfully, issues in environmental circles.
In recent years, a handful of studies have suggested that the use of atrazine may have a negative impact on the health of frogs.
That's why EPA asked for the definitive study to be done.
This study, done in 2 separate labs on 2 separate continents, was conducted by independent researchers, funded by Syngenta, and audited by the EPA.
And that study showed that atrazine has no effect on frogs' development.
And the science repeatedly, including studies ordered by the EPA over years and years, in multiple countries, show that these herbicides are not harming frogs.
The true test in science is whether or not you can reproduce something. Many of the studies that have shown any effects on frogs have never been reproduced.
It's important to note that there is legitimate concerns about frog populations around the world, and we have, over the last 30 years, seen frog populations decline.
However, current research shows that frogs in agricultural areas are thriving. In fact, frogs in urban or suburban areas show the greatest number of abnormalities, while frogs in agricultural areas show very few. Considerable efforts are underway to determine the causes of the decline in amphibian populations, but the most likely causes are habitat encroachment and disease.
The good news is that there doesn't appear to be an incompatibility with modern productive farming and amphibian health and environmental health.
Farmers are the first environmentalists. You know, we do take care of this land. We have to. We couldn't survive on this land, and we couldn't keep farming this land for as long as we do if we didn't take care of it.
From a perspective of someone who works in agriculture and on a farm, we make sure that everyone that we're dealing with has products that are safe for the environment.
In my opinion, farmers have been on top of that since day one. I mean, we're eating the food ourselves, we're feeding our neighbors, our families. We've been at the forefront of food safety since the beginning of farming.
As a mom, I want to make sure my food is safe for my daughter, and being in agriculture and growing up in agriculture, I feel confident that what I'm feeding her is safe.
I have to say from my own standpoint that this is something I take a very hard look at whenever I'm looking at things as principal scientist for Syngenta. We want to have products that farmers can use safely and that are safe for the consumer. And in a word, we do everything we possibly can to assure the safety of our products.